and on Thursday, we expect to cover another section in the last part of that session. The first part of the session will be done by Southern Illinois University, training people on the Illinois Works reporting system, but we will be doing Section 8 of the Grantee manual as part of that session. As we have discussed before, the 2022 Grantee manual is composed of 14 different sections, and the sections that we're going to be covering now are very important because they cover all the different aspects of the Illinois Works pre-apprentice life cycle, which we will review soon again in the next few minutes. I'm Norman Ruano, and I'm the Deputy Director of Illinois Works, and I'm going to be facilitating part of this session today. And with me today is Dr. Gia Suggs from Northern Illinois University and Christine Flynn, also from Illinois Works. So Gia and Christine, if you could please say hi to our audience today.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Glad to be here. Glad to see all of you here.
Hello, everyone. I am also excited to be here and to share all of this content with you.
Thank you very much, Gia and Christine. As we have mentioned before, the Illinois Works is a new program, and one key important aspect of Illinois Works is that it is a semi-structured model of workforce development that includes a variety of different components, and we want to make sure that as we go through the content today, you have an opportunity to ask questions because we will be talking about a variety of requirements for implementation and at the same time some tools that have been created to help you successfully implement your program. Illinois Works is composed of 3 different programs: the Illinois Works Apprenticeship Initiative, the Illinois Works Pre-Apprenticeship Program, and the Illinois Works Bid Credit Program. And today we are particularly talking about the Pre-Apprenticeship Program, and you are part of the Illinois Works network of providers located throughout the whole state of Illinois, providing pre-apprenticeship services. This is the second training that we're delivering related to the 2022 Grantee manual. As I mentioned, we already delivered one session. If you did not have an opportunity to attend, please go to our resource page on the Illinois workNet system. If you do not have access information for that system, please do not hesitate to reach out. You'll be able to find the recording for that webinar there. And this today is the second one that we're going to be delivering. There'll be a third one to be delivered next week. And we would really appreciate if you would schedule it, put it on your calendar, make sure you attend so that we can cover the last portion of the Grantee manual. In this particular webinar, we're going to cover Section 4 of the manual, which addresses outreach and recruitment, and I will be delivering that. Section 5, which addresses program application and intake. Christine will be delivering that. Then we're going to be covering Section 6, which is participant wraparound services and student support services, and Christine will also be delivering that. And then Section 7, training, instruction, and certifications will be delivered today by Gia. And again, as I mentioned earlier, Section 8, which is program completion, transition services, and follow-up, will be delivered on Thursday as the second part of that webinar on Thursday. So please make sure that you attend. In terms of our objectives today, course objectives today, is very important that we keep these in mind as we move forward. By the end of this training, learners will be able to identify outreach and recruitment tools and methods, respond to leads based on their category, apply eligibility criteria, support potential participants through the program application process, complete an intake process, provide wraparound services, provide support, student support services. We can move on to the next one, please. Comply with Americans with Disability Act requirements, ADA requirements, implement a comprehensive program orientation, create a comprehensive curriculum based on experiential training, incorporate a Kirkpatrick level of evaluation, provide transition services post-program completion, and engage in follow-up activities. These two specifically apply to the Section 8, which we will be delivering on Thursday, but they're part of this course. That's the reason why we mentioned the objectives there. As we have done before, this session is being recorded and it will be made available for your review at the Illinois Works Partner Guide website, which is part of the Illinois WorkNet system. And as I mentioned, if you do not have your access information, please do not hesitate to contact us so that we can help you secure that. But it's being recorded and it'll be made available in the next couple of days after we finish the session. Any questions or comments before we proceed to our next module here? Questions or comments, you could also email us at ceo.ilworks@illinois.gov. That's our general email box where we receive all kinds of inquiries and requests or comments or questions. So if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to us there. If you do have any questions here today and would like for us to address them, just put them in the chat or unmute yourself, and then we'll be able to address your questions. So let's get going with the next module, which is Welcome and Introduction. By the end of this module, we want to know if there is anything in particular that you're interested in us covering. I already mentioned the sections that we're going to be addressing today, but if there's anything in particular, let us know. We will also provide you with an update on sections 1 through 3 of the Grantee manual. We added an update that is very important as we move through the content today. As a matter of introductions, if you could please enter your name, your organization, and your role in the program. As you have noticed, we're doing this every time we're doing a webinar just because we want to become acquainted with each other and want to know the different people in the programs that are going to be doing, providing and the various services and playing the different roles in the program. So your name, your organization name, and also your role in the program. We have Katrina here with us from Quad County Urban League Program Director. Debbie Wright from Macon County Grant Coordinator. Renata Johnson from Community Assistance Programs Chief of Staff. Tamika Wilson, Youthville, Lake County Executive Director, and Nick Quinn from Evanston Rebuilding Warehouse Program Director. Donna, Program Manager from Bethel Family Resource Center. Tori Vasquez, Coordinator of Clinical Services, STEMworks from Lumity. Rhonda, Grant Coordinator, Hacia. Anybody else? Goldie Fleming, Executive Director at EDDR. We also have Molly from Revolution Workshop, Associate Director. Kimberly from EDDR, Program Manager. Lita Hines from EDDR. We also have Mark Williams from Hire 360 today. Thank you very much for sharing your information. Anybody else before we proceed? And I want to emphasize as we move forward that it's very, very important that you ask any questions you may have. They may be beneficial also for the other providers that are on this webinar. One of the key things that we added to section 1 of the manual, all of you should have received the link to access the manual today. So please access the manual and have that handy as we go through the manual today, sections 4 through 7. But one of the key things that we did was we added a staff roles section to section 1 of the manual. And I want to emphasize, and this is very important, they're saying, Christine, that the Hire 360 team cannot access this event. Can you open the registration link again and send? So I don't know what the issue might be there. But there are several program roles identified, and I want to clarify that it is not the expectation of Illinois Works that you will have a single unique human being in charge of each of these staff roles. What we are requiring is that these staff roles get executed, and a human being, a particular individual, may be in charge of 2 of these roles, but we want to make sure that the roles are executed. And as such, it's very, very important that we pay attention to what these roles are expected to do. Program administrator, that's pretty commonsensical here. We expect that person to be fully in charge of the program, ensuring that all program activities are executed and done well per the requirements of Illinois Works. You can refer to sections 9 through 14 of the manual for more information on the requirements outlined there. Outreach and recruitment coordinator, this person will be in charge of ensuring that all outreach and recruitment activities are conducted. Pre-screening, the pre-screening process is also executed, and that all the tracking related to that in the Illinois Works reporting system is done. Wraparound service coordinator, I know that some of you use the word case manager. We use the word wraparound service coordinator, who is responsible for ensuring that participants are assessed during intake, and that based on that assessment, they get the necessary wraparound services that they need in order to succeed in the program and to reduce barriers. Instructors, some of you, depending on the curriculum that you're using, may need a variety of instructors. Some of them need to be certified. So we expect, obviously, that the organization will have the necessary instructors. Instructors' credentials will have to be submitted through the Illinois Works reporting system so that we can have record of who is delivering instruction at your facilities. Student support services coordinator. This is a person that is in charge of academic success, ensuring that students are progressing in terms of attendance and succeeding with the various modules that they're taking. And if they're not, ensuring that there's action plans that are being created and executed to bring students to academic progress. Transition services coordinator is a person that is in charge of ensuring that participants are assessed, they do the career assessment with them, and that plans are created for transitioning students successfully to DOL registered apprenticeship programs and employment. In this position or this role also executes the follow-up services required after a participant exits the program. And then lastly, data entry coordinator, and here's where there is some flexibility here. For some programs, they may assign a person to be in charge of entering all the data in the Illinois Works reporting system, but some other programs may decide instead that everybody in the program will be responsible for doing some data entry. What we want at the end is to ensure that data is being entered real time and is being entered accurately and being verified to ensure that we do not have any problems with data entry. So those are the various roles that, as we continue on through sections 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, you will you will hear about, that we will be discussing, and we wanted to make sure that they were summarized and they were put in one place in the manual so that you knew exactly what the description was for each of those roles. So as I mentioned, you will find those on the section 1 of the manual, and if you have your manual handy, you'll be able to see them there right before all the definitions that we have in the manual. Okay, great. As we have done in the past, we use Mentimeter to engage with the various participants of the webinars that we deliver. So if you could please go to www.menti.com and enter the code that you can see on your screen, 80562881, so that you can engage with us in the program. It's very important that you do this because we use Mentimeter for interaction with participants, but also to evaluate the webinar at the end of training today. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes so that you can access Mentimeter and enter the code. Please let us know if you have any technical difficulties accessing Mentimeter. Okay, good. We obviously take the evaluation results very seriously, and in the last evaluation we conducted, we were asking for feedback, and one of the most important pieces of feedback that was provided was that you needed a break, and so we have 3 options here for breaks. One is do a 10-minute break in the middle of the webinar, or do 2 5-minute breaks at very particular points in the program, or end 10 minutes early. So if you could please, access Mentimeter, you can see now some of the results already on the screen, but if some of you have not voted, please go on and do so that we know what to do here related to the breaks. So far, 2 5-minute breaks are ahead. That's the option that is winning right now. 1 10-minute break, it's definitely not exciting for a lot of people. So still 2 5-minute breaks are ahead, competing seriously with ending 10 minutes early. So we're going to give it 1 more minute here to see where we are. But given the numbers that we have in terms of attendees, it's very likely that we're going to go with the 2 5-minute breaks. Yeah, certainly that looks like the option that has won the competition here. So we will be, as we proceed, we will be doing 2 5-minute breaks. One will be when I finish section 4 and Christine gets ready to start sections 5 and 6, and then we'll have another 5-minute break after we end section 6 and before we start section 7. So thank you very much for participating. We certainly appreciate your collaboration here. Using Mentimeter again, please answer the following questions. How many of you attended the Grantee Manual webinar number 1, the one that we delivered last week? How many of you were part of webinar number 1? So far, most of you were part of webinar number 1. We do have a couple of participants here that were not part of webinar 1, and we want to make sure that we do justice, obviously, to all the participants that are present here today. So the majority of you, the big majority of you, were part of the webinar that we did. For those of you that were not part of the webinar, again, that webinar was recorded, and you can find it as part of our resource page on the Illinois workNet system. So if you do want to make sure that you access that webinar and go through it so that you could learn about sections 1 through 3 of the 2022 Grantee Manual. The next question, using Mentimeter, is there anything in particular you're hoping to cover that we covered today? We already discussed that we're going to be covering sections 4, 5, 6, and 7 of the Grantee Manual, but is there anything in particular that you would like us to cover that is very important for us to address? If you could please go to Mentimeter and provide responses, we would appreciate it. Anything in particular? So far, the no's are winning. Detailed eligibility of participants. We will definitely address detailed eligibility of participants. Marketing materials, we will also address those. Requirements versus recommendations. Yes, we will make sure that as we move through the manual that we are clear what is required and what is recommended. Timelines and launch minimum requirements. Yes, we will address some of it, although in terms of timelines, your programs have already submitted work plans to us, so you may want to discuss that with your program administrator in terms of what your timelines are. How to sign a person up. We will definitely talk about that and all required documents needed. Enrollment requirements of participants, yes. So all of those items that you have discussed, with the exception of timelines, because the timelines are based on your program and we're based on the work plan that you said we will be covering. So anybody that has any questions related to timelines, make sure you ask your program administrator about your timeline so that you have that clear. Any discussion about providing an advance for program expenses. We will not be discussing program expenses today, but if you do have any questions related to that, don't hesitate to reach out to us directly, and we will have a conversation with you the way that we have been having with other programs to address that. Placement, I imagine placement, if what you mean by placement is transitioning participants, we will be addressing that on Thursday. So thank you very much for participating. We're going to move on now. Let us know, obviously, if you have any questions. Again, if you have any questions, just either ask your question, unmute yourself, or ask your question in the chat, and or email us at ceo.ilworks@illinois.gov. Gia and Christine, do we have any questions in the chat?
There are no questions in the chat. There is a comment from Johnson, who is also inquiring about the financials, and you responded to that already, explaining that you welcome a private conversation.
Great. Thank you very much. So we're going to move on now to Section 4 of the manual. Section 4 of the manual is outreach and recruitment. And for Section 4 of the manual, we're going to be discussing, you're going to be able to describe the role of outreach and recruitment in the success of pre-apprenticeship programs, describe the types of participant leads and follow-up activities with each lead type, leverage outreach and recruitment resources, methods, samples, and tools to create a pipeline into the pre-apprenticeship program. You will also learn about the expectations related to tracking outreach and recruitment efforts in the Illinois Works reporting system. And also very important, as you know from the first webinar we delivered, the integration of DIBE, which is diversity, inclusion, belonging, and equity, and the 6 core values of our program culture into all elements of your program's outreach and recruitment strategy. So that's the focus of this section. You can find Section 4 of your On the manual, page 55 of the manual, that's where you will find section 4, which is outreach and recruitment and all the related to that. It's very, very important to keep in mind that without conducting outreach and recruitment, you will not have participants, you will not have students to serve. So outreach and recruitment provides potential participants with information about the pre-apprenticeship program with the objective of recruiting them into the program. The 2022 Grantee Manual will provide you with information, techniques, and tools to help you and your program staff highlight the goals, program components, and core values of the Illinois Works pre-apprenticeship program. It's important to emphasize that this is the first step in the pre-apprenticeship life cycle. As you can see, we covered this in our first webinar, but I want to bring it back again. And this is the model that we use at Illinois Works to ensure that programs can really understand what the requirements are as participants come into the program and then exit the program. So the first step is outreach and recruitment, and that's what we will be covering today. Outreach and recruitment efforts Outreach and recruitment efforts may be the first time potential participants will encounter the Illinois Works Pre-Apprenticeship Program offered by your organization, your program instructors, and your staff. It is very important that individuals presenting programs or program components out there to the public can articulate what the program has to offer as well as value propositions for potential participants. There are a lot of different items that they can highlight, and some of the items that can be highlighted as these outreach and recruitment activities are happening include emphasizing the goal of diversifying the construction industry. Particularly, this is in particular in relation to the fact that a lot of you are targeting very particular populations that have not had great opportunities in the trades. Articulate the focus of transitioning to a DOL registered apprenticeship program in employment. This is very important because we want to make sure that participants, individuals that may participate, are fully aware that our goal is not for them just to complete a pre-apprenticeship program, but to fully transition to a DOL registered apprenticeship program. Also, it's very important to emphasize the benefits of making a career in the trade, not only a job, but a career, how much it pays, and how it works. Also, highlight the needs of potential participants. It's important to understand that a lot of participants are going to come to you with a significant number of needs, and how your program will address those needs in order to overcome barriers. And also, as important, is emphasize the fact that the program culture emphasizes collaboration, innovation, resilience, so that they understand what type of environment they're going to be coming into. In terms of outreach activities and strategies are focused on a comprehensive communication strategy that raises general program awareness geared to widen participation. It's important to emphasize that outreach includes marketing, establishing a marketing plan, identifying dedicated resources, and developing internal tracking of progress. Please keep in mind that having a marketing plan for your program is a component, is a requirement of Illinois Works. So you will be required to submit a marketing plan and a budget that goes along with it. We will be discussing marketing later on in the webinar, but it's important to emphasize at this moment that as part of your outreach activities, you will be required to submit a marketing plan and a budget to Illinois Works. Recruitment are activities and strategies focused on attracting specific participants or groups of grantees that you are seeking to enroll in your program or that you're wanting to partner with. Participant recruitment efforts should focus on the target populations as outlined in your grant proposals. Some of you are focused on enrolling women. Some of you are focused on enrolling younger populations. Some of you are focused on serving the general population. Some of you are focused on serving returning citizens. It's important that your recruitment efforts focus on that particular target population that you outlined to us in your proposals. Effective recruitment efforts are crucial to attracting qualified participants. And once again, your recruitment messages should emphasize the value of your program, what it is that participants would get if they join the program. So it's important to communicate the positive aspects of the Illinois Works program. It's also important to emphasize the participant stipends. Some individuals may need financial assistance as they participate. It's also important to emphasize program-specific information and not to be misleading related to that information. Provide information regarding pre-apprenticeship training, the expectations of the program, and that they are, obviously, that the program is particularly focused on transitioning individuals to DOL registered apprenticeship program. So one of the key things related to outreach and recruitment is the necessity to go and secure potential partners. And your partners can include nonprofit organizations, employers, and others with the goal of growing your partner network. It's very important that we emphasize here that having partners help you recruit, do outreach, be it that it is a church, be it that it's a nonprofit organization, is very important because they can help you secure leads for your program. Identify the specific needs of your program participants as well as pay any gaps in your current services. Use this information to consider potential partnerships your program could cultivate to respond to those needs. Partners can help you close some gaps related to your recruitment and outreach efforts. Using Mentimeter, if you please, would answer the question on your screen. Have you started outreach and recruitment activities for your program? Again, have you started outreach and recruitment activities for your program? We have 2, 5, let's say 7 so far that say that they have. We have 10 people, 13 people say that they have. That's great. 14. We have 21 people that say that they have definitely started outreach and recruitment activities. That's great. A significant number of you, 24. The big majority of you have already started outreach and recruitment activities. Great. Continuing on, thank you for participating. Outreach to applicants. And this is we're going to cover something that is very important here. And we want to emphasize how the model works with Illinois Works. The primary goal of outreach and recruitment activities is to identify potential participants or participant leads. A participant lead is an individual who may be interested in enrolling in the pre-apprenticeship training program. The aim is to funnel leads through the screening process and transform qualified individuals into applicants. So as you can see here on the graph that we're showing you on the screen, you start with outreach and recruitment, you create leads, you screen those leads, and then they become applicants. That's the whole process here that needs to be followed. In terms of leads, we categorize leads, program leads, into 4 different types. As you pursue your outreach and recruitment activities, it is helpful to understand the type of individuals you may be encountering, how to best respond to certain individuals. This can help you maximize your efforts and get the best return on your outreach and recruitment efforts. So when it comes to leads, potential participants typically fall into 4 different types or categories of leads. You have hot leads, you have warm leads, you have cold leads, and you have closed leads. Hot leads are individuals that have already decided that they want to apply for the pre-apprenticeship program. These are the individuals that are ready to apply. Warm leads are individuals who have shown some interest in the pre-apprenticeship program. They may have responded to some social media, but they have not yet decided that they want to apply for the program. Cold leads are individuals that might have responded to to some marketing or outreach efforts. However, you have not had any contact with them, or you had some contact with them and they expressed little interest in the program. So that's a cold lead. Then a closed lead is one where the individual has definitely expressed no interest in the program or did not pass the pre-screening process. So those are the 4 different leads categories that you will encounter. Why is it important to categorize your leads and understand the different categories? Well, because different categories of leads require different touches. The goal of your outreach and recruitment efforts is to transform a qualified and interested individual into an applicant. This is accomplished through consistent and strategic communication with potential applicants, also known as touches. A touch is any communication opportunity that motivates qualified individuals to apply. In terms of a touch could be social media posts or connection, a face-to-face conversation with the individual, a presentation, a webinar, a phone call, branded email, word of mouth, newsletter, blog post, text message, postcard. Any of that could be a touch. And it's important for us to understand that different types of leads require different intensity in terms of touches. Using Mentimeter, please answer the following question. What type of touches are part of your outreach and recruitment plan? Are you doing text messages? Are you doing newsletters to your leads? Are you doing word of mouth? Are you doing branded email? Are you doing a presentation, a face-to-face conversation, or following up via social media? So please give us an idea of the type of touches that you have as part of your outreach and recruitment plans. Boots on the ground, that's great. We're going to be covering that soon. Phone conversation, emails, email blast, social media, great, word of mouth. What else? Is there anything else? Radio, that's good. We'll be discussing that in a minute, using media outlets. Printed flyer, very good. Alumni networks, good. TV ads, that's very good. Teacher network, that's very good. So these are all great ways of communicating and having touches with your leads, right? Community outreach. Business outreach, this is all great stuff. Thank you very much for participating. These are all great ideas, and obviously, it shows your level of experience in communicating with a lot of your potential applicants out there. So in terms of data touches, the research varies, but we know that it can take between 6 to 8 touches to convert a lead into an applicant. Here's the challenge. The majority of organizations, nearly 90% of organizations start trying after the 3rd or the 4th touch. But if it takes 6 to 8 touches, stopping after the 3rd or the 4th touch may make you lose on an opportunity to bring in a qualified candidate. As we would expect, cold leads typically require more touches than warm leads, and warm leads typically require more touches than hot leads. Your program should not view the 3rd or the 4th touch as a failed attempt. Instead, these touches should be viewed as a countdown to the application process for qualified and interested individuals. And that is the reason why it's so important to have an outreach and a recruitment coordinator that could focus their energy on ensuring that this is going on, generating leads, and ensuring that there's contact touches with those leads is going to be important, because the more you do it, the more success you would have in ensuring that you have qualified individuals to apply for the program. So think about how this data impacts your program and will impact it going forward, what you're going to be doing in terms of your marketing, outreach, recruitment, to ensure that you have enough touches, to ensure that you have a clear understanding of your leads. Now, something that is very important is we do have some tools that we have provided in Section 4 of the manual that you can use to help you manage this situation. Touches are not always intuitive, which touch, when, or how many. So we have provided a table 7 on page 59 of the manual, which is lead follow-up steps and timeline, so that you can see, depending on the type of lead, when you should be following up, the type of touches that you could be having with those different leads. Any questions about leads, touches, potential action steps before we move on to the next section? Any questions in the chat, Gia and Christine?
No, there are no questions in the chat.
Great. Let's discuss outreach and recruitment tools. In the next section, we will learn about outreach and recruitment tools. Outreach and recruitment tools aid in creating and implementing strategies that generate participant leads, which result in applicants who are eligible for the Illinois Works pre-apprenticeship program. A marketing plan is one of those very important tools. It's very important for your success in terms of your outreach. And the marketing plan should outline the target audience, a list of communication channels that will be utilized, a timeline of when marketing and communications will be distributed, and accountable staff responsible for specific tasks. We do have a marketing plan template that we will make available to you. One important thing I wanted to mention at this point is, as you know, this program is being funded by the state of Illinois, and we would request that you please communicate as part of your marketing plan, communicate with the elected officials in your area, with your state elected officials in your area. We have been in communication with them, and they want to make sure they hear from you because they can make their outreach capabilities available to recruit for your program. So please make sure you communicate with your state senator's office, your state representative's office, and they will assist in marketing and outreach activities. So if you have already created your marketing plan, that is good. If you have not created one, you will need to do so since having a marketing plan and a budget that goes along with it is a requirement for Illinois Works. As I mentioned, we have template number 4. It's a sample marketing plan worksheet and timeline that you can use, that we're making available through this manual. You can use to customize it for your purposes, but this sample marketing plan already has a lot of information that will help you structure a good and technical marketing plan. Another tool that you can use is flyers and information sheets. Your marketing plan may include, obviously, flyers and information sheets. These should be effective, eye-catching, and provide core information about them. Christine, if you don't mind, do we have the final templates for the flyers and information sheets, or are those still in production?
The information sheet is ready and in the appendix that was sent out today, and the flyer we are still working on.
Okay, great. So you will have very soon access to 2 templates. One is a sample Illinois Works pre-apprenticeship program flyer, which we are working on. The graphic designers are working on it. And again, it's a template so that you can modify it for your purposes, but it has the logos, it's got the colors, it's got a nice look, it's got pictures that show diversity and inclusion in the construction industry. You also already have a sample Illinois Works pre-apprenticeship program information sheet that you can use. You can see it now on the screen. And please go ahead and use these for your purposes. it's very, very important that applicants have access to as much information as they can. So we would appreciate if you would please create your information sheets, your flyers as soon as possible, post them on your website just to make sure that that information is there. One important thing I wanted to mention, and I'll get back to what goes on these tools soon, but I wanted to mention that from the Office of Illinois Works, there is a whole strategy that we're developing to support your marketing efforts. One of the things that we have created is what's called a heat map. And a heat map is a map of the state of Illinois that has a variety of different variables in it, like, you know, you could identify where DOL registered apprenticeship programs are located throughout the state. You could also see, based on the coloring of the map, where construction projects, state-funded construction projects are happening. You could also see the economic development regions. And if you go on the map, you're going to be able to see that we have yellow stars on the map, and the yellow stars on the map are actually your programs. They're the pre-apprenticeship programs, the Illinois Works pre-apprenticeship programs, and the public can click on that star depending on where they're located, and they'll be able to see your information, your program's information. So one request that we have for you, if you could please, as soon as possible, ideally after we finish this training by the end of the day today, send Christine the contact information, name, contact information of who's going to serve as your outreach and recruitment coordinator, so that we can put that contact information on the heat map, so that when the public is looking, individuals are looking to find out who they should communicate with at your program. If they're interested in joining your program, they can get that information on our heat map. On the heat map, we will also include your website. So we would ideally like to get a landing page on your website where the information sheet will be for the program, where individuals can get information about your program when they go and navigate your website. So if you could please do that, we would certainly appreciate it. So this is one of the tools that we're going to be using to support your marketing. There are other things that we're going to be doing to support your marketing related to social media and other things, but we will address those with you once those tools are ready in the next 2-3 weeks. I see a question on the chat.
Yes, there's one from Grace, and she would like to know, when is the marketing plan due?
We will be communicating to the program administrators this week officially about the marketing plan, and we'll be giving you a deadline, but we would expect for these marketing plans to be completed in the next week or so, just to make sure that the programs are ready to implement the timelines that they submitted to us in their work plans. So we will send some official communication related to that to the program administrators on record for your particular program. Okay, great. The heat map, where can you find the heat map? The heat map will be available this week on our website, DCEO's website. If you go under Illinois Works, then the Illinois Works Pre-Apprenticeship Program, the minute you hit that website, you're going to see the heat map there, and there'll be a legend right next to the heat map so that you understand how to navigate the heat map. But again, it's a tool that is made public, and people can go there. At the same time, we are getting a lot of inquiries into our general box. Once we get the contact information for your outreach and recruitment coordinator, we will be forwarding leads also from the Office of Illinois Works related to inquiries that we've had for your program or programs in your geography. Okay, great. Using Mentimeter, please answer the question on the screen. Given your target audience, what locations might be appropriate for distribution of either flyers or information sheets? Flyers or information sheets. The difference between a flyer and an information sheet is that a flyer has a call to action, but it doesn't have a lot of information about the program. The information sheet has all the information about your program, the certifications you offer, the prerequisites to enter, the modules that are covered, the length of the program, the services that you offer, including stipends, the ultimate goal of the program, which is transitioning individuals to DOL registered apprenticeship program. So that's the difference between the two. One is purely information with all the information about your program. The other one has a call to action related to people calling you or engaging with you about an interest that they may have in the program. So again, the question was, given your target audience, what locations might be appropriate for distribution of either flyers or information sheets? Great. Unemployment offices, schools, churches, libraries, social media, websites, grocery stores, great. Social services offices or organizations. What else? Libraries. That's a great, obviously a great recommendation there. City Hall, food pantries. Yes, you definitely know what you're doing here. It's important to emphasize that depending on the locality where you're located geographically throughout the state, you may have more density related to these organizations, but you already know your communities. That was one of the requirements that we had in Illinois Works in order to give you a grant. So you know your community, you know where it is that you are successful in getting leads. So we would recommend that you definitely do that to be effective in recruitment. Moving on to outreach and recruitment methods. Now that we have looked at some tools, let us take a look at a few outreach and recruitment methods and strategies. Please keep in mind that your program may be more, or your geography or your population, some of these may work more or less with some of those populations, but we just wanted to make sure that we had a list here to ensure that we cover the whole spectrum. Diversify your recruitment team. This is very, very important. As you go and engage the populations that you want to recruit, make sure that those populations, that your recruitment staff also reflect, the populations that they're trying to recruit. Advertise on social media platforms. We have provided on the manual a whole section on social media and what's effective for certain populations, what are some of the pros, what are some of the cons related to some social media platforms. Please take a look at that on your grantee manual. It will be very helpful for you. Also, something that is very important is creating a landing page on your organization's website. As I mentioned, it's important for you to have a place where we can direct leads, but also where the public can go. That place should include your information sheets, should include your flyers, and any contact information related to who they should communicate with that's in charge of outreach and recruitment. Feature underrepresented populations in construction and the building trades. This is very important. Make sure that your marketing literature, all your information has diversity, has inclusion. If you're targeting women, that women are properly represented in all of those materials, just to make sure that people feel like they belong. Partner and collaborate with community organizations. Make sure you have partnerships with organizations that can refer individuals to you, high schools, community colleges, community centers, Department of Human Services, workforce centers, grassroots nonprofit organizations, churches. All of these organizations can serve as good sources of leads for your program. Attend career fairs. Career fairs are also very important. There's a large group of people that would attend. You could promote your program there and ensure that you have all the necessary documents. When we talk about application and intake, we'll discuss some of those required documents that you have to use for those for some of these events. Consider hosting an open house at your facility or at a partner facility. In the manual, we have provided tips. Exhibit 2 are tips for running an open house, and we also created a document, template number 7, called sample Illinois Works pre-apprenticeship program open house agenda. So you can use those tools. They're not required to be used, but you can certainly, if you do decide to host an open house, you can use those tools to help you run an effective open house to generate leads. The other thing that works pretty well for some programs is public service announcements. If you have direct connections with media outlets, make sure you take advantage of public service announcements as an opportunity to get free outreach out there in mass media. And encourage word-of-mouth recruitment. As you would know, you've been running programs for a while, word of mouth is probably the most effective way of recruiting people for your program. If you have been running your program for a while, you probably have a significant number of individuals that have either engaged you and didn't participate in the program or engaged you and participated in your programs. Make sure that they find out about this opportunity and that they refer individuals to you. It's definitely the most effective way of recruiting potential participants into your pre-apprenticeship program. Also, meet potential participants where they are. Street outreach. For some communities and in some geographies, street outreach may be an effective way of reaching your populations. However, we have also provided in the Grantee manual very specific safety tools for you to consider if you're going to use this type of recruitment method, because the safety of your staff and your partners is very important to us. So we want to make sure that if you do this, you do it in a safe way. Also consider partnering with veteran organizations. There's a different number of organizations out there that serve veterans. If your target population includes serving veterans, go and develop relationships with them. And lastly, create easy to read and multilingual marketing and recruiting materials. If some of you are serving immigrants, keep in mind that even though some of them may not have the skills necessary to enter the program, their children or their grandchildren or their nephews may have the skills. So, you know, creating multilingual materials could be helpful if that's your target audience. So this is a bunch of different outreach and recruitment methods that we cover in the manual. Make sure you read the manual, go through the information that is provided there. Moving on to tracking outreach and recruitment, please, it's very important that you that I emphasize that all your participant recruitment and engagement and partner recruitment and engagement must be tracked in the Illinois Works reporting system. The Illinois Works reporting system tracks participant recruitment through the participant recruitment and engagement screen. When you get trained, starting this Thursday and continuing the week after, on the Illinois Works reporting system, one of the screens they're going to train you on is the participant recruitment and engagement screen. And that is also the screen where you would, you'll be able to categorize your leads as hot, cold, closed, depending on the status of the lead. You're also going to be able to enter information about any type of communication or contact you've had with your leads. You'll be able to enter all kinds of case notes there in that screen for you to keep a good record of what's going on. And that also applies to the engagement that you've had with partners, be it that they're employers, that they're business associations or community colleges or unions or social service agencies. Any contact or communication that you have with them, you'll be able to track through those screens. And I want to emphasize that the Illinois Works team will look at tracking of recruitment and engagement data as one of the key metrics in denoting that you're progressing towards meeting your goals. The more you engage in these activities, the tracking that you do and the data that you enter, all is giving us an idea of how well you are creating a pipeline to be able to get not only candidates and applicants, but at the same time to be able to develop partnerships with community organizations out there. Any questions so far? Are there any questions in the chat, Christine and Gia?
No, at this point, there are no questions in the chat.
Very good. So moving on to pre-screening. So again, as I mentioned, we will be very specific about mentioning when there was a requirement, when it was a recommendation. As I mentioned, running an open house is not a requirement, it's a recommendation. When it comes to pre-screening, pre-screening is a requirement. After outreach and recruitment activities, yet before the application, pre-screening needs to be conducted. So let's say you have a lead that goes from cold to warm and to hot. Hot meaning they're interested in applying for the program. Before they formally apply for the program, they have to be pre-screened. So you have to use the pre-screen assessment, which falls under the outreach and recruitment stage of the pre-apprentice life cycle. The pre-screen assessment, that process provides you with information regarding your outreach and recruitment efforts, as well as it allows you to determine if a potential applicant meets the basic requirements of the program. So you do pre-screening to determine if they meet the requirements of the program before they apply for the program, okay? So once a lead is determined to be hot, they should be pre-screened. So the pre-screening assessment is located in the participant recruitment and engagement screen of IWRS. This pre-screening assessment, it's part of IWRS and is located in the participant recruitment and engagement screen. So these are the questions. There are 6 particular questions that you have to ask when you're pre-screening a hot lead that is interested in applying for the program. Do you have an interest in making a career in the construction industry? The way this pre-screening assessment works is that you ask the question. Depending on their response, the assessment leads you to do certain things. It tells you what to do depending on what the responses are. Do you have the ability to attend the program? Do you have a high school diploma or GED or HiSET? Are you at least 18 years of age? Are you an Illinois resident? How did you hear about this program? All of these questions will help you determine if this is a candidate for the program. And if it is a candidate for the program, then you would move on to the next stages with that particular individual. Something I want to mention about this last question, how did you hear about this program? This would allow us to track data about the success of various outreach activities, marketing strategies, and you're going to be able to choose in IWTS what the individual is saying, how they heard about the program. Was it through friends or a family member? Was it through social media? Was it through a flyer? Was it a referral from a nonprofit? Was it a referral from a faith-based organization or others, right? So this is going to be also very important for us to know where to continue to invest and where to, in particular for your program, what is working in terms of generating your leads. Do you have any questions? I think we have question or comment in the chat box, Gia.
Yes, we have one from Mike. Mike would like to know, do they have to track every contact with every candidate they come in contact with, and before they even sign up for the program? And he would also like to know, he is also expressing that this seems like an extreme administrative burden.
Well, so one thing that is very important to emphasize, and as we have emphasized it throughout the process, even from the time we did technical assistance with potential applicants for Illinois Works. Illinois Works is a semi-structured model of pre-apprenticeship training. And as we have mentioned from the very beginning, the platform that is to be used and the systems that are to be followed are very specific about how and when things need to be done in order to be successful with the implementation of Illinois Works. we expect for programs to track their activities and their contacts with participants. That is the reason why, as I mentioned earlier, there are certain roles that need to be executed as part of your program. We also express all of those details in the NOFO and are making the guidance clear now what the expectations are. Programs are expected that when they have contact with individuals to use the Illinois Works Reporting System, IWRS, to document those contacts, document their interactivity. It's a way of giving you a tool to make sure that all the investments that you're making in your outreach and your recruitment activities are actually, you have a tool that you can use to manage that, to document that. So it's not just an issue of reporting here, it's an issue of having the necessary tools to successfully execute all these tasks for the benefit of your own program. I understand the concerns you may have about the administrative burden. I hear you, but this is a requirement of Illinois Works, and we are making all the tools available for the programs to be able to execute these. Any other questions or comments, Gia, in the chat?
No, there are no other questions or comments in the chat.
Great. So one key thing to emphasize as we move forward is that the pre-apprentice life cycle, again, is the model that we are following. So as we move forward through the different sections, we will be showing you again the model so that you know how these requirements and how these components apply in our part of the model and what the different requirements are as part of that model. So at this moment, we're going to take a 5-minute break. If you please could make sure that you come back in 5 minutes. I'm going to be handing it over to Christine in our team, who will be doing section 5 and section 6 of the grantee manual. So if you would please again make sure that in 5 minutes we come back. It's right now 10:15. We'll be back by 10:20 to start with sections 5 and 6. Thank you much.
Hi, Christine.
Hi, Gia, can you hear me?
I can. Yes. Do you want to? Actually, it sounds good.
Okay, there's no echo or anything?
Mm-mm, no.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so it is 10:20, so we are going to go ahead and get started with our next section, which is section 5, program application. So by the end of this module, you will be able to leverage standardized tools and templates, including the program application, the interview questionnaire, acceptance letter, conditional acceptance letter, and denial letter. You'll be able to reference the eligibility requirements for program participation. You'll be able to integrate the diversity, inclusion, belonging, and equity, as well as the 6 core values into all elements of your program's application and intake process. So before we move on, are there any questions regarding what this content will cover, what this content will be? Gia, are there any questions in the chat?
No, there are no questions in the chat.
Okay, great. So let's go ahead and get started. So we will review the program application process, which is in section 5 of the Grantee manual. The Illinois Works program application process is designed to enroll participants who are able and ready to make a career in the construction trades. The Illinois application process is the next logical step after the pre-screening assessment conducted during the outreach and recruitment stage of the pre-apprentice life cycle. Once a participant is determined to be a hot lead, as Norman discussed, they can begin the application process. So the application process is a 3-stepped process, and we'll delve a little bit deeper in these in the coming slides. But just very briefly, step 1, they'll complete that pre-assessment screening and go into that application. Step 2 is they will conduct a standardized interview for those who are qualified after the application stage. And then step 3, based on the application and interview, your program will make that enrollment decision, whether they were accepted, conditionally accepted, or denied. So let's start by going through the eligibility requirements. So as Norman mentioned, the pre-screen will address those kind of large-scale deal-breaker eligibility requirements. But the application gives your program the opportunity to gain a little bit more insight into the applicant. So the eligibility requirements here are common requirements for pre-apprenticeship programs, but most importantly, they are the most common requirements for registered apprenticeship programs. So as you will hear us say time and again, the goal of our program is to enroll individuals, transition individuals into registered apprenticeship programs. And these requirements match those registered apprenticeship programs. As a result, that will help your participants transition a little bit easier. So I'm not going to walk through each of these for you, but we do offer additional information on page 68 of the Grantee manual that you were sent earlier today, if you would like to reference more information about each of these. So let's start into the application process. So step 1 is the program application. If potential participants pass the pre-screening assessment, they can complete a program application. There are 2 ways to complete the program application. The first way is that the individual can complete a paper application, and that is on their own, and they would turn it into a staff member, and then that staff member would input that application information into the Illinois Works reporting system within 24 hours. The second option is for a staff member to sit with the participant and put in that information directly into the Illinois Works reporting system. So on Thursday, LaToya McCrae, our Illinois Works reporting system trainer, is going to walk through everything that we discussed today, but specifically the application to show you how to input the information, how to submit the application, and go through this process. So we also have provided in the appendix that you were supplied this morning, Exhibit 3, which is the hard copy of the program application. So please refer to that appendix to find the hard copy of the application. And again, this will match exactly what is in Illinois Works reporting system for ease of data entry. So at this stage, you might also find that there are some individuals who are not qualified for the program or decide at that time it's not a right fit for them. So this is where the referral sheet will come in. So a referral sheet is, as I said, for an individual that cannot be accepted into the program. And your referral sheet should include information about resources and other programs that might be a fit for that individual, including but not limited to one-stop career centers, other training programs, adult education programs. This might also be where you refer them to your partner that offers a GED program or an ESL program if those are the needs that the applicant has. So you're welcome to use your own referral sheet, but we do offer a sample referral sheet, which is also in the appendix that we sent out this morning. That is template 8, as you can see here on the screen, the sample applicant and participant referral form.
Christine, there is a comment in the chat from Mike, and I think he is referring back to the pre-screening questions.
Okay.
Regarding this, I think perhaps can you explain how pre-screening does not immediately make someone ineligible, but may also trigger services to help support them? So for example, the age criteria or the, whether or not they have a GED. So Mike's concern is that we are eliminating people prior to their ability to work with them, which the pre-screening, that's not the intention of it. And he's also inquiring about the drug screening. So can you also talk about how we use that information as well and whether or not it, makes someone ineligible?
Absolutely, those are great questions. So the pre-screening is an opportunity for programs to kind of check off the basic eligibility of our program. So the pre-screen tool, those items are kind of the basics that individuals have to enter the Illinois Works program. Now, at that point, if you have an individual who doesn't meet one of those qualifications, that is a time that you also can utilize this referral sheet. So it does not mean that you have to stop working with them. It doesn't mean that you don't have the opportunity to follow up with them, but that's a time where you might refer them to a GED program and continue to follow up with them. That's a time that you might refer them to an ESL program and continue to follow up with them. So that's kind of how the pre-screening works. And then those pre-screening questions kind of give you that basis for whether they can move on to that application stage or not. And then as far as the eligibility requirements regarding, I believe it's drug testing, Gia, that he was asking about?
He is, yes. And who's accountable for paying for it?
Yes, absolutely. So drug testing for our program, we do ask the participants if they will be able to pass a drug test during the application process. One note is that we do not require them to take a drug test prior to coming into the program, but we do ask that programs administer a drug test at some point during the program. And the importance of this is that most, if not all, registered apprenticeship programs do require that individuals can pass a drug screening or drug-free when they apply. And so this is a way to ensure that these participants can demonstrate that they can meet that requirement. But it is not something that you have to test for prior to acceptance. They just have to report if they would be able to pass one or not. And then part of the program, I believe Mike asked about cost. So that would be an allowable cost within our program because it's an eligibility requirement. Are there any other questions, Gia?
There are no other questions in the chat.
Okay. So then we will pick up with step 2 of the process, which is the standardized interview. So the standardized interview allows you to gather additional insight into the applicant's interests, long-term goals, and what the applicant hopes to gain from the pre-apprenticeship program. The interview must be conducted by at least 2 staff members who record the applicant's answers, provide independent scores, and then calculate the average of the 2 scores for the applicant. The maximum average score is 40, which is 100% on our tool, and the minimum score for acceptance is 32, which is 80%. So individuals who are scored with an average score less than 32 should not be admitted to the program unless there are significant mitigating factors. So the final interview score and both interviewer questionnaires must be scanned and uploaded into the Illinois Works reporting system. And again, this is something that LaToya McCrae, our Illinois Works reporting system trainer, will be reviewing on Thursday and showing you how to follow this step as well. So the grantee manual provides a hard copy of that pre-apprenticeship program interview questionnaire. It is exhibit number 4 in the appendix that was sent out this morning. And we have to give special thanks to the Hispanic American Construction Industry Association for allowing us to repurpose their interview questionnaire to deliver this to you today.
Christine, there is another question in the chat.
Absolutely.
Alma would like to know if it is possible for them to modify the budget to include the drug screen.
So, Alma, let's take that offline because we will be reviewing budget modifications in Grantee Manual Session 3. But if you have a more immediate question, we would be happy to address that earlier than that. And that training is on February 10th. So if it's something more immediate, feel free to reach out to us individually. Okay, mitigating factors. So if your program chooses to enroll a student with mitigating factors, these factors as well as the reasoning for enrollment must be documented in the applicant's Illinois Works reporting system profile. So again, these mitigating factors are characteristics that if someone scores less than 32 on their interview, that you might say, you know, they did score a little bit lower, but they have these other items that are going on. We can offer them additional support. Perhaps, you know, one of the interviewers just scored a little bit lower than the other that brought that average down, but they're still a great candidate. If you can offer that justification, if you can offer that documentation, we would ask you to upload that into the Illinois Works reporting system, and you can go ahead and accept that individual. But we do find that we don't want more than 20% of a cohort to be admitted under those mitigating factors categories.
So Christine, there are 2 more questions in chat.
Yes, absolutely.
So Emma would like to know, are Social Security numbers mandatory? And then Christopher has a question, was the drug testing requirement outlined in any documentation they received prior to receiving the manual?
Great questions. So the first one, I'm sorry, Gia, can you repeat the first one for me?
Yeah, so the first one was regarding the Social Security number and whether or not it would be mandatory.
Absolutely, that's a great question. So Social Security numbers are not mandatory to enter our program. So we do ask for them because they will be influential later in the program if we're following up with candidates in the IDES system long term, but they are not an eligibility requirement. And then the second question, Gia, was it regarding, I'm sorry?
So was the drug testing, is this manual the first time drug testing is clear for them that this is something that they need to do? Or was this communicated in any prior documentation, NOFO, something else?
Absolutely, great question. So this should not be the first time that you all are seeing this. For some of the program staff, it might be the first time, but program administrators would have seen this earlier, and we did discuss this in our grant negotiations with program administrators. So it might be new for direct program staff, individual contributors, but it should not be new for program administrators.
All right, there are no other questions.
Great. So we'll move on to step 3 then of enrollment decisions. So once applicants have completed their applications and interviews, you and your admissions team will make that final enrollment decision. So for our program, we have 3 enrollment decisions outlined that I'll delve into a little bit deeper in just a moment. So the first is full acceptance, second is conditional acceptance, and the third is denial. So I want to just pause here and call your attention to page 74 in the grantee manual. So we outline a concept that we refer to as participant skimming. And this is important in enrollment because it dictates who is accepted to the program and who might not be accepted to the program. And we just want to be cautious that programs are not participant skimming. So what that means is when programs select applicants that are deemed more likely to succeed purely because they have a less need for wraparound services or student support services. So for our program, an applicant's potential wraparound and student support service needs should not be considered in enrollment decisions unless those needs make them ineligible for the program. So just wanted to make that clear as we go into the decision letter conversation. So as I outlined, there are 3 decision enrollment decision statuses. So the first is full acceptance, the second is conditional acceptance, and the third is denial. So full acceptance are for those applicants who met all of the requirements of the pre-screen assessment, they went through their application and were a qualifying individual, and then they reached that 32 or above threshold on their interview questionnaire. This is also for those individuals who met those requirements but then were perhaps admitted based on those mitigating factors. The second category is conditional acceptance. So these are for individuals who met those requirements, who got that 32 or above on their interview or were accepted with mitigating factors, but there might be one item that needs to be confirmed. So this might be for someone who states that they have a GED or high school diploma but doesn't have transcripts or an actual diploma. So this might be something that you put on their conditional acceptance letter and state, you have received acceptance based on providing these documents, based on proving that you do have a high school diploma or a GED. And then the last status is denial. So this is for individuals who do not meet the requirements, they do not meet that 32 or above threshold on their interview, and they don't qualify for any of those mitigating factors that we discussed. So we do ask that all programs send out a letter either via mail, via email, whichever works better for your program. You have the option, if you would like, to utilize some of our sample letters. So we've provided a full acceptance, a conditional acceptance, and a denial template for you in the appendix that was sent out today. And so feel free to utilize those and modify them to meet the needs of your program. But we do just ask that they continue, for those who are accepted to the program, to outline basic programmatic information, outline the date and time of orientation, anything that they may need, documents they may need to bring in, tasks they may need to do prior to the beginning of instruction. So are there any questions before we progress to the next section? Gia, are there any questions in the chat?
See here. No, there are no questions in the chat.
Okay. Great. So then we will go ahead and move on. So we are going to be staying in section 5, and be moving on to the intake process. So by the end of this section, you will be able to describe the importance and tasks related to the intake process, including the wraparound service assessment. Okay, so we'll stay, as I said, in section 5 and review the intake process. So once applicants are accepted, they will become participants and move into that intake process. So the intake process should focus on intake staff, case managers, wraparound service coordinators, meeting one-on-one with the participants, rapport building, and assessing participant needs and establishing wraparound services to support those needs and address any barriers the participants may have.
Christine, there is a quick question regarding the last module. It's from Michelle.
Yes.
And she would like to know, is there a time limit when docs are needed when a conditional offer has to be made?
So we would ask that they would bring them in prior to instruction. So it would depend on the document, but if they can bring them into the first day of instruction, so orientation, I would say that would be the limit. We wouldn't want them to start instruction prior to verifying if they actually are eligible for the program. Great. So the intake process begins with an intake meeting. So intake meetings serve as a key moment in building a positive cohort culture. It's important to remember that the intake meeting will be the first time program staff will be interacting with individuals as a pre-apprenticeship program participant. So up to this point, they were either a lead or they were an applicant. Now they are a participant of your program. So this meeting should really set the tone for the overall program. And critically important in this stage is that participants see and feel the diversity, inclusion, belonging, and equity components of the program, as well as the aspects of all of the core values that we outlined in our previous sessions. These intake meetings are also a great point to start building rapport with participants. The rapport is the creation of a professional relationship that features mutual understanding and connection that results in a trusting relationship between the program instructors, staff, and program participants. Building rapport is essential to creating a program culture that fosters belonging, inclusion, and collaboration. And intake meetings are an ideal space for your program staff to begin establishing rapport with participants. And we find that when participants feel that they have trust and they can trust those around them, they better engage in their instruction, they better engage in their support services, and they better engage in that career transition towards the end of the program. So the ability to build rapport with participants is a skill like any other. This skill can be learned and it can be improved over time. So now we're going to do our first interactive activity of this section and jump over to Mentimeter. If you can please answer the following question. What techniques do you or will you use to build rapport with your program participants? Follow-ups, great. Morning meeting to share goals and gratitudes. Constant communication and transparency are very important. Show respect. Circle groups. Communication, regular touch bases with goal setting, great. Find out what their needs are, absolutely. Listening, very important. Great. Well, these are all great examples, being responsive, meetings, team building exercises, communication and listening, making sure to meet where they are and not be judgmental. That's extremely important to building that trusting relationship, absolutely. So these are all great examples. Thank you so much for your engagement on this. So you all brought up some of the examples that we have provided here, but I'll just go through these really quickly to express the importance of each of these. So the first is remembering participants' names. So this might seem small, but this can really go a long way to show participants that they belong, that you're expecting them, that they're part of the crew. And so it's important, it's an important but a small but very important act. So being prepared for participant interactions, this means, showing up to meetings, making sure that all of the documents that they may be expecting are prepared for them, making sure that class instruction is prepared for them. Because when we show up prepared, it tells the other individual that we were ready for them, we were thinking ahead for them, they were part of our plan for that day, and they were a priority to us. So finding common experiences or opinions is the next one. So these don't need to be deeply rooted. They can be things like, what's your favorite sports team? What's your favorite pizza? I know in our city that's maybe a little bit more of a controversial topic than some others, but so finding those common experiences to relate to participants can be kind of that first door into building that relationship. Next is actively listening. So someone put this up in our Mentimeter, but that is extremely important. It's not just hearing what they're saying, but stopping, making sure to have that good eye contact, making sure to get up from behind the desk, and make sure that they know you're engaged in the program, in their conversation, both physically, mentally, and emotionally. And then the final one is be aware of body language. So nonverbal communication, as we know, can sometimes be more important than what we say. And so ensuring that we're monitoring our tone, our volume, our hand motions, how close we stand to our participant, all of these things can go a long way for building that trusting relationship and having them know that you're engaged in the conversation. So that rapport building is extremely important, and that trust building is extremely important because this meeting is also where we're going to be assessing for wraparound services. And so that individual is now in a position where they are going to be disclosing barriers or challenges they might have. And they might not feel as comfortable with someone that they don't have that rapport with or they don't have that trusting relationship with. So it's important to start that kind of rapport building and get to know the participant as you go into this wraparound service assessment. So assessing participants for wraparound services is a critical part of the intake process. Within the Illinois Works reporting system, you will have access to the wraparound service assessment that will display all available wraparound services provided. The list will offer guiding questions for the wraparound service coordinator to assist participants, and the wraparound service coordinator will be required to document if the participant chooses to opt into services or declines services. So again, this Thursday, LaToya will be going through how to complete this wraparound service assessment in the Illinois Works reporting system, and she will show you how participants can opt in and opt out and going through those questions on the assessment. But we next are going to be delving in a little bit deeper into this assessment. But before we do, are there any questions before we move on to the next section? Gia, are there any questions in the chat?
No, there are no questions in the chat.
Okay. And if there are no questions, we'll go ahead and we'll move on to Section 6 of the Grantee Manual, which is Participant Wraparound Services and Student Support Services. So we are going to start by focusing on wraparound services. So by the end of this module, you will be able to complete a wraparound service assessment and deliver wraparound services, provide additional support for participants with complex needs, comply with the Illinois Works guidance for performance-based stipends. So before we move on, are there any questions about this content or a last chance for questions about the last module we went through? Are there any questions, Gia?
Nope, we have no questions.
Great. So let's get started with Section 6, Wraparound Services, the Grantee Manual. Wraparound services is one of the primary tools for fulfilling the Illinois Works core values of overcoming barriers and empowering participants for resilience and self-sufficiency. Wraparound services are supports that address non-academic needs to reduce or eliminate barriers for entrance and success in the Department of Labor registered apprenticeship programs. These can include an array of options, and participants must opt into wraparound services. They cannot be assumed or imposed on participants. This model of services leads to greater self-sufficiency as it challenges participants to think through long-term planning for services beyond the time that they're in your program. The opt-in model requires participants to meet with a wraparound service coordinator one-on-one and establish services during the program while beginning planning to address those needs long-term. So the wraparound service assessment, and as I stated in the end of the last section, this is located in the Illinois Works reporting system, and the wraparound service assessment must be completed with each participant as part of the intake process. Keep in mind that the staff's role is to offer these services, not to assign them. So again, participants must opt into wraparound services. This assessment is completed during intake. However, we do understand that participants' needs may change throughout the program, and as a result, participants have the option to opt in or opt out of wraparound services at any point during their active enrollment in the program. If a participant chooses to opt into a new service after the initial wraparound services assessment is completed, then the wraparound service coordinator would need to complete a new assessment in the Illinois Works reporting system. So in front of you, you can see a list of the wraparound services that the Illinois Works program requires. So wraparound services should be laser focused on minimizing or removing barriers so that participants have an equitable opportunity to complete pre-apprenticeship training and transition to a registered apprenticeship program and employment. So grantees must offer each of the following wraparound services on the screen. So it is important to note that we understand that not all programs will be able to offer all of these internally. And so that's why we encourage you to reach out to your partners, reach out to your networks, and ensure that all of these services on the screen here are available to your participants, either from your program or from a partner program. So Gia, do we have a question in the chat?
We do. There's a question from Tony. Tony would like to know, how do participants access this assessment, and do providers need to print them out from the Illinois workNet?
Absolutely. So this is completed during that one-on-one meeting with the wraparound service coordinator, and it's completed directly into the Illinois Works reporting system. So participants will access this assessment in that intake meeting where they're meeting with the wraparound service coordinator to review all of these services, and then they can choose to opt in or opt out. So, as I said, this is the required list of services. However, we understand that there are wraparound services that your target population may need outside of this list. If you do need to choose or provide an additional wraparound service, we ask that you provide information about that wraparound service through the Illinois Works reporting system, and the Office of Illinois Works can review it and approve it and ensure that it is an allowable cost underneath our program. But like I said, we do understand this list is not exhaustive of all wraparound services that participants may need.
Christine, there's another question from Annie, and this is kind of they require a multi-layered response. So the comment says here, if a wraparound service such as mediation or financial literacy is part of our training hours, what happens when someone opts out?
So that's a great question. So if we do know that some programs do have financial literacy as part of their curriculum. If it is part of your curriculum, they would not be able to opt out of that part of your curriculum. So this is primarily for programs that do not offer that as a already existing part of their curriculum. This would just be additional assistance for programs that do not offer that. So they cannot opt out of your curriculum.
And just one quick correction here. So Annie mentioned meditation or financial literacy. So I just wanted to correct that reference.
Yes, no problem. So, and the answer remains the same. If it's part of your curriculum, they cannot opt out of it. Okay. So in the appendix that we provided to you today, and also in the part 2 of the grantee manual, you will see table 10 and table 11. So these are on the grantee manual page 83 and 84. And both of these tables offer an array of potential barriers that participants may face, and then connects them with potential partners that you can utilize either through referrals or through partnerships that you can connect with and help participants address those challenges or those barriers.
Christine, if I may, real quick, I think that there, just for clarification on one of the questions,
yes,
the wraparound services assessment is not completed by the participant. It's actually completed by the wraparound services coordinator who is conducting the intake meeting. So I just wanted to clarify that because the question was if the participants would be, someone mentioned that the participants would be accessing that assessment, and they are not. That is actually completed by the wraparound service coordinator.
Correct, correct. Thank you, Norman. Yes, during that intake and during that intake meeting. Okay, great. So next up, we utilizing Mentimeter. If you can go ahead and answer this question, what partnerships have you established to help provide wraparound services? So I know a number of you have, oh, there they are. They're popping up now. So rental assistance partner, banks, financial literacy, local daycare, right? Legal aid agencies, local one-stop partners, great. CBO partners, mental health agencies, case management. These all look great. I'm glad to see that so many people have these established partnerships. Great. Thank you for that. Nice job. We will move on now to performance-based stipends. So programs are required by the Illinois Works Jobs Program Act to provide stipends to all participants for instructional hours. Stipends are a payment made to a trainee or pre-apprentice program participant for living expenses and are designed to ensure that participants can maintain financial solvency throughout the tenure of the program. It's extremely important to remember that stipends are not a wage and program participants are not employees. All grantees must comply with the Illinois Works performance-based stipend policy. And it's also critically important that grantees do not use that wage or wage equivalent language in program promotional materials or in participant interactions. So a copy of the Illinois Works policy will be available to you, and we will show that in just a moment here. And it's important to note that we do ask that you comply with our Illinois Works policy, but if your policy meets or exceeds the Illinois Works policy, you may maintain your own policy. So keep in mind, if you choose to implement an alternate policy, it must be submitted to the Office of Illinois Works for approval. So a policy that would meet or exceed our policy is going to meet the following items. So grantees must provide stipends up to $11 per instructional hour. Stipends must be the same for all instructional activities. Stipends can only be provided to participants. Stipends must be reduced if participants do not meet or exceed attendance and performance measures. So I want to call attention to the instructional hours and instructional activities. So for the Office of Illinois Works, instructional hours and instructional activities include time spent in the classroom, a construction workshop, or during work site practicums. Instructional hours are not when participants are receiving wraparound services, student support services, transition services, or going through follow-up. So that's an important distinction to make regarding when stipends are paid out or not. So as I stated, stipends must be reduced if participants do not meet that the attendance or the post-assessment passing rates. So for our program, the attendance rate is 80% or higher. We count as meeting or exceeding. And for post-assessments, it is 70% or higher on per module post-assessment. So not meeting these thresholds should result in a percentage-based reduction in stipends. So as Gia had shown on this screen, Template 12 is in the appendix that was sent out today. So that is our sample policy. Feel free to utilize that policy, and it is provided for your use there. As I said, you can utilize your own policy if it meets or exceeds the policy that we have provided. We also are going to be providing in the near future a sample performance-based stipend procedure. And so that will give you a little bit more in-depth information about what percentage to reduce stipends, items like that. But again, that is going to be a sample procedure. So if you have your own procedure, you can utilize that one as well. And so before we proceed to the next section, are there any questions in the chat, Gia or Norman?
Yes, we have a couple questions here.
Great.
The first one is from Barbara. So Barbara would like to know, how will agencies be reimbursed for stipend payments if all contractual outcomes are tied to completion?
Okay. So we're going to be talking a little bit more about the payout model on the 10th in the final grantee manual session, but we also can talk in a one-on-one. So I will just say very briefly that the all of our payment model is a reimbursement model, and so that includes those stipend payments. And our outcome metrics are tied to enrollment, completion, and transition. So we have outcome metrics running the length of the program. But again, we're going to be talking more in depth on that on the 10th. And if you want to have a more in-depth conversation one-on-one, please reach out to us and we can talk specifically about your program, because each grantee program is a little bit different.
Okay, and the next question from Annie. If our in our application, we indicated an increase on stipends when people met the attendance performance requirements, is that okay? Or do we have a negative feedback model?
You know, I'm going to throw that, if Norman, if you're available to answer that. I don't see an issue with that as long as it's not exceeding that $11 per training hour. But Norman, if you have any input on that.
Certainly. I mean, we have seen from different providers different stipend models, and I would love to be able to see the procedure on how this exactly would be operationalized. If you could submit that to us to take a look at it, we will be more than happy to review it and then have a direct discussion with you. I think it sounds like an interesting model. The question here is how exactly it is operationalized, given that they would have to also include the fact that if they didn't meet certain criteria, attendance and performance, they would have to be there will have to be some deductions made to the stipend. So if you could submit something in writing to us so that we can take a look at how the procedure is executed, we would be more than happy to review it and provide feedback.
Great, thank you. Oh, thank you, Ann. Andrea, are there any other questions in the chat?
No, there are no other questions in the chat.
Okay, great. So then we will go ahead and move on to the second half of Section 6 in the Grantee Manual, which is student support services. So by the end of this section, you will be able to provide student support services. Oh, you know what? I apologize. Okay, there we go. Okay. So in addition to providing those student support services, you will also learn to track participants' attendance, academic performance, and respond to student alerts in the Illinois Works reporting system. I apologize, Gia, I jumped ahead of you there. Develop policies for makeup of post-assessments and missed sessions, comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act requirements, and integrate diversity, inclusion, belonging, equity, and the 6 core values into all elements of your program's student support services. Like I said, we're going to stay in Section 6 and discuss those student support services. So these student support services are supports that address academic needs. So unlike wraparound services, some of these supports are mandatory for participants based on challenges related to attendance or performance. So it's important to remember wraparound services are focused on non-academic supports, and student support services are focused on academic reports. So while participants may opt into services such as tutoring for math, reading, or specific instruction, other services underneath student support services, such as making up hours for missed courses or retaking assessments after failing, are mandatory to complete the program. So using Mentimeter, please answer the question on your screen. What student support services will your program offer to respond to the needs of your target audiences? So obviously we know each of your programs is targeting a different population. Some are very specific populations and audiences. So think through what are some particular needs those groups that you are serving have. Math enrichment, transportation assistance. Okay. So transportation assistance, those are going to be wraparound services. So those are not academic supports, but Math enrichment, absolutely. Math tutoring. Math enrichment, okay. Extra meeting days, okay. That might be additional assistance there. At ADA assessment. Financial literacy, okay. Okay, so thank you so much for all of those responses. So I just want to reiterate that in our program, we really want to pull that distinction between wraparound services, which are non-academic support. So that's where that transportation assistance comes in. That's where, you know, maybe mental health counseling comes in, whereas student support services are those academic supports. So maybe it's academic counseling or math tutoring, math enrichment, assisting them with, you know, opening up extra time for them to take an exam, things like that. So it's really important to remember that in the Illinois Works program, we have wraparound services, which are non-academic, and student support services, which are those academic supports. So thank you so much for all of your answers there. So the Grantee Manual provides assistance with identifying student support services to address academic challenges and barriers. So on page 85 to 86, you'll see Table 12, which is barriers for specific groups and populations. And then Table 13 is on page 89, and that's academic focus barriers, and then services to assist in overcoming those barriers. So student support alerts and tracking. So student support services are provided when a participant demonstrates a need either through absences or missed or failed assessments. It is the expectation of the Office of Illinois Works that programs require 80% or higher attendance and 70% or higher on post-assessments. And so these attendance and post-assessment scores will be tracked in the Illinois Works reporting system. So if students drop below attendance or performance thresholds, they are required to make up hours or retake assessments. And we ask that your program make sure to express these requirements and outline them in your commitment agreement at the beginning of instruction. So if a student drops below that 80% attendance threshold, I apologize, Gia, if you could just jump back one slide for me. So if they drop below that 80% attendance threshold in a single module, they will need to make up missed hours to be considered on track to successfully complete the program. So it's important to note, and many of you likely already know this, there are going to be some modules, credential certifications that require higher than 80% attendance. So one notable one is the OSHA 10 certification program does require 100% attendance. So we would expect on those modules that that attendance threshold is increased to meet the requirements of that certification. So if the participant does drop below that 80% threshold or that 100% on those specific modules, the Illinois Works system will add a red flag alert to the participant's profile. For assessment scores, all modules should require an assessment at the end of a module. So in the curriculums that you all have chosen, there are end of module post assessments on almost every module. So that is the expectation if any additional modules are added in outside of that construction curriculum, that you go ahead and require a post assessment. And so if a participant scores 70% or less on an assessment, the Illinois Works reporting system will add a red flag alert to the participant's profile. So again, we're in talking about tracking and talking about Illinois Works reporting system. We will be reviewing all of this with LaToya on Thursday. So this is kind of that information. She's going to be showing you the technical side of what this looks like when an individual is off track for attendance or off track for their assessment scores. So identifying and removing those red flags. So academic success coordinators are responsible for identifying the need for coordinating and ensuring the successful delivery of student support services. This staff has access to a robust Illinois Works reporting system dashboard and a suite of reports that will allow them to easily identify participants with red flag alerts. So these alerts are meant to signal that those participants need additional assistance. So that additional assistance might be an academic need, and it might be a non-academic need. So if the participant is struggling and they have an academic need, so if a red alert, a flag alert is related to that academic need, participants should be connected to the necessary support such as tutoring or additional time to take assessments or makeup sessions. So that's when that academic support or academic success coordinator is going to develop an action plan for that individual. So outlining dates for when they need to make up hours, outlining a makeup post-assessment date, enrolling them in tutoring or referring them to tutoring. And so that action plan is really going to lay out a path for that participant to get back on track and to remove that red flag from their file. Now, it is possible that, a non-academic need could impact their ability to be present and engaged in the classroom, and that might show up in absences, that might show up in failed post-assessments. So if it's found that that individual has non-academic needs that is causing that red flag alert, that academic success coordinator should work in unison with the wraparound service coordinator to help offer that participant additional support. So if they suddenly have transportation issues, if they suddenly have childcare issues that weren't there before, the academic success coordinator and the wraparound service coordinator can work together on that action plan to ensure that that participant gets back on track and has all of the support that they need. So again, those red flags will be removed once that individual is back on track. So we have provided in the grantee manual 2 documents for you. So there are 2 sample policies that you can feel free to use. So template number 14 is in the appendix that we supplied to you this morning, and that outlines what an extenuating circumstance is defined as for your program. And then template 15 is a sample makeup session and assessment policy. So outlining to participants what does it mean to have to make that up, what are the requirements there, and so again, those are both available for your use. So let's move on to Mentimeter. So using Mentimeter, please go ahead and answer the question on your screen. So what partnerships have you established to help provide student support services? And so again, those student support services, as some of you wrote last time, it might be tutoring, it might be additional instructional support. So maybe it's, after instruction hours. Okay, local colleges, churches. Great. Partnered with an educational provider, library services, great, great. Yeah, these are all great partnerships to have and great services to provide to the participants. So colleges engaged a specialized training partner. Fantastic. Additional after-hours instruction, very valuable to many participants to have that extra time. City colleges. Okay, great. Great. Free tutor directory, partners. Fantastic. Great. Thank you so much for completing that for us. Nice job. So we'll move on now to our last portion here, which is ADA requirements. So the Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA, prohibits discrimination against individuals living with disabilities. So Illinois Works programs are ethically and legally responsible for adhering to administrative requirements according to the ADA. So underneath the ADA, all of our programs must have a designated ADA coordinator, provide public notice, have an established grievance policy, conduct a self-evaluation, and develop a transition plan regarding accessibility. And so that completes Section 6 of our grantee manual. Are there any questions before we proceed to the next section?
So there are no questions in the chat.
Okay, great. All right, well then, Gia, is this now a time where we are going to go ahead and break?
Yes, we are, and it is 11:20, so we'll take a 5-minute break and return at 11:25 for our last module.
Great, thank you so much, everyone.
Hi, Christine. Are you on the line or have you taken a break?
No, I'm here, sorry.
No worries. I just wanted to, if you were on the line before we move to the next section, Donna McCullough has and she has alerted us that it's a long question alert, but she is inquiring around ADA. So if either you or Norman are available to answer that one.
Yes, let me take a look at it. I will, I or Norman will answer it.
No, Donna, no worries at all. Either Christina or Norman will respond. Thank you for the question. Okay, it is 11:28. So Donna, they are likely conferring regarding your question. And when they come back, Christine or Norman, just please. Oh, Norman.
I already responded to Donna on chat. She has any other questions, she can respond in the chat.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we will go ahead and get started with the next and, of course, the last module. So we are now in section 7, which is training, instruction, and certification, which is our last module for today. So you have made it to the very end here. During this module, we will talk about training expectations, program orientation, career assessment, and commitment agreement, which are part of the orientation, the Illinois Works Pre-Apprenticeship Curriculum requirements, additional certifications that you may want to offer participants. We'll talk a little bit about the Illinois Essential Employability Skills Framework, a little about diverse learning modalities and provide some information on how to get more information about that, and then training, evaluation, and assessment. Any questions about this last module for today? Okay, so in your 2022 Grantee manual, training, instruction, and certification is section 7. And so program instruction is a central tool, of course, for any pre-apprenticeship program. And during instruction, it is important to not just train participants, but prepare participants. And I think what is perhaps unique to a pre-apprenticeship program is to also empower them. So they will be taught, they will be trained, they will be prepared, but we're also obligated to empower them to be successful. So let's start with why training. We want to make a little bit of a distinction here between teaching and training. And I think a lot of you, because you've been doing pre-apprenticeship work for a while, this distinction won't be new to you. But teaching is typically focused on the end user or the learner. So it's about information dissemination, making them smarter. When someone is teaching, they care about, theoretical frameworks and models. And then the focus is really to make someone smarter. Training, however, is a little bit different. And although it has its roots in teaching, training actually takes a shift. The focus is not on the individual, and I know for some this can be a hard transition, but the focus is actually on business. What does the business need in order to be successful? So how can we build skills in individuals to meet business needs, as opposed to how do we spend time with people just to make them smarter? So training is focused on skill building for business support. So let's talk a little bit about adult learning and adult learning principles. So we're not going to dive deep into this because there is a session that's going to be a little bit later in the month where we will take some actual deep dives around learning modalities, adult learning principles. But for now, let's just talk a little bit about it. So adult learning principles. Using Mentimeter, rank these, the first being the highest retention, and the fifth being the lowest retention. Which of these do you think would allow participants to have the highest retention, and which of these do you think would allow participants to have the lowest retention? These are pretty good, and certainly what I would expect from a group of individuals who have been doing this work for the duration of time that you all have actually been doing this. All right, we have a few more weighing in. So we have here the highest retention, what they see, hear, say, and do. Second, what they see, hear, and say. Third, what they see. Fourth, what they hear and see. Interesting. And 5, what they hear. So let's see what the data says. All right. Participants will remember 20% of what they hear, 30% of what they see, 50% of what they see and hear. Oh, my graphic is blocking a little bit of the information here. 70% of what they see, hear, and say, and 90% of what they see, hear, say, and do. And that's why the pre-apprenticeship program, with the focus on the do, provides the highest value for our participants. The do is what we call experiential learning. Some other terms that you might be familiar with, or kind of modalities for experiential learning are work-based learning, small group lab work, on-the-job training, and practicums. And so Illinois Works expects that these different type of experiential learning techniques are built into your curriculum. So experiential learning within the pre-apprenticeship program for Illinois Works will typically occur in two ways, either in a construction laboratory, which grantees are expected to have at their sites, or on actual job sites. Any questions about this before we continue to move forward? Okay, so let's hear a little bit from Sun Si, who is a Confucius scholar. From a very long time ago, adult learning principles were important, and a lot of you who are either instructional designers or instructors have heard this quote multiple times. But what I hear, I forget. What I see, I remember. However, what I do, I understand. And the do understand is experiential learning, which can have anywhere between 75 and 90% retention post the instruction. And the only thing that is even remotely parallel to experiential learning from a retention standpoint would be teach back. So where you actually ask students to learn the skill themselves and then teach it to others. Okay. I want to talk a little bit about designing for experiential training. And so for all of the instructional designers and instructors in the room, I know this is a gross oversimplification, but for any experiential training, the instructional steps are pretty much the same. So we start with information dissemination. So we describe what the skill is and why it's important. Then we demonstrate the skill. Then we ask the learner to perform the skill. And then we do a series of feedback. So they can get peer feedback, instructor feedback, but it's also important for them to give themselves feedback. So what do you think you did well? What do you think you can do different? And then they reflect upon the experience. And so for every kind of performance outcome or learning objective, information dissemination, demonstration, perform the task, receive kind of a 360 feedback, and then reflect upon the experience. So many of you are leveraging instruction from other certifying bodies, which will typically include either that exact or a similar design approach. But if you are designing homegrown instruction, then those are some really basic low-hanging fruit steps that you can follow to make sure that your instruction is sound from an experiential standpoint. One of the things that's going to be important is that our instruction stays within scope. So at a minimum, your program must be 150 hours. We are asking that it does not exceed 300 hours. There are some curriculums that are exceptions. They have exceeded the 300 hours. If you are exceeding 300 hours, then that information just needs to be communicated to Illinois Works, and then you need approval for that completion. I want to caution those of you who are exceeding it because, as you know, this is a reimbursement model, and so completion is connected to receiving the compensation for that month, which we'll talk about later. So staying within that 150 and 300 allows for a reasonable completion, which also is connected to reimbursement. So I'll just say that and pause, because I want to take a further deeper dive there, but I do want to point that out for you. So what are some of the things that are actually in scope? So the orientation, which we will talk about in just a second. There are the pre-apprenticeship required certifications, so you can use either NAP2 or NCCER. There's the OSHA 10 hours, CPR, first aid from the American Red Cross. There is the Illinois Essential Employability Skills Framework, which can be included within that 150 and 300 hours. And then, of course, work-based learning, which we just talked about. A few things that are actually not in scope. All right. Your wraparound services are not a part of the instruction in that 150 to 300 hours. Support services are not a part of those hours. Transition services, nor are follow-up services. Some of the things that that would be included in these out-of-scope activities would be complementary education like GED services, ACT prep, and college fairs. These are important and may be relevant for some participants, but would not be included in your curriculum within that 150 to 300 hours. Okay. Any questions about in-scope and out-of-scope before we move forward to orientation?
We have nothing in the chat, Gia.
All right, awesome. So I don't know if I'm being comprehensive or if everyone is just ultra aware that this is the last module and we need to get through it. So, but please feel free to ask questions, and we will stay on at the end of this for a few more moments in case there's a question that comes up later. All right, let's talk about orientation. So orientation is that time frame after the participant receives their acceptance letter or conditional acceptance, but right before the actual program starts. So Illinois Works recommends that you do one of two things, that you either schedule an orientation at some point prior to the start of instruction, or that you make the first day of instruction the actual orientation. If you make the first day the orientation, it can help ensure that that individuals are there and that you have their undivided attention, as opposed to scheduling something that might be a couple hours that is removed from the actual start of the program. Why is orientation important, and what do we hope to accomplish in orientation? So orientation is the first time that many of these participants will have an opportunity to meet you, the instructors, the trainers, the program staff, and also one another. So this is a really important time for additional rapport building and creating connections within the cohort. It's also an opportunity to level set expectations. During the orientation, participants will complete the career assessment, which will then allow your team to complete the career plan, as well as sign their commitment letter. To assist you, in the appendix, template 10 is a sample of an Illinois Works orientation agenda. You can actually follow this, or you can augment it for yourself, but we just wanted to make a tool available to you to assist you with organizing your orientation. During orientation, they have to complete a career assessment. What we are advising is that the career assessment is completed while they are in the room during orientation as a group. So this is a pencil, pen, paper, hard copy completion of the career assessment, which you all can collect at the end of this and then enter it into the Illinois Works reporting system. The primary goal of this is to assess participants' readiness, identify any secondary career goals, and anticipate their timelines for transitioning to a DOL pre-apprenticeship program or career. But of course, the primary goal is an apprenticeship program. As a note, because they are completing the assessment pencil paper as a group, Illinois Works is asking that all of the career assessment information is entered into the reporting system within 24 hours of the orientation program. If you would like to see a copy of the career assessment, it is available in the appendix of the 2022 grantee manual in the appendix. Once you have the career assessment in the Illinois Works Reporting System, you can then develop a career plan. And so development of the career plan typically would include the instructors and the additional staff who will be helping coordinate services for the individual. And there is a question in the chat, so I'm going to pause right quick, from Carissa. Can the career assessment be completed electronically by the participant? So the career assessment is actually in the Illinois Works Reporting System. And if you have 20 people in your cohort and you need them all to complete it at one time, then that could be time-consuming and a little cumbersome for each of them to complete them, because they would need their own computer and they would also need individual access to the reporting system, which they will not have. So I will pause there because Norman and Christine are on the line, and let them respond to that as well. There is a second completion of the assessment that does require a one-on-one completion, and because it's one-on-one and the participant is sitting with the staff person, it is entered directly into the reporting system. But as a group process, I'm actually not sure that that's possible, but let me open this up. Christine, Norman, any thoughts different than that?
So, yeah, I mean, that's a discussion that we've had with our developers of the platform. It's complicated because, as you mentioned, we will have to give access to all the participants in order to do that. That's something that we have discussed. If we're able to actually do that in the future, we would let the programs know. But at this particular moment in time, that first assessment would have to be done hard copy and then enter the information in the Illinois Works Reporting System. You know, as you mentioned, Gia, the second assessment, the reason why there are two assessments is because what we have found from experience is that a lot of times the career goals of people evolve as they go through the program. So we want to know what their career goals are to create a plan before they start instruction, but then once they've gone through instruction, and they're about ready to finish the program, we want to evaluate the career goals again to see if anything has changed, just to make sure that whatever transition plans and whatever career services are being provided to individuals are accurate based on their latest understanding of their goals. But the second one is a facilitated one in a meeting with the transition specialist. So that one will be entered directly electronically when the meeting is happening, but the first one is at this point in time will have to be a hard copy one that then later gets entered in the Illinois system. And if we are able to change that, the developers are able to change that, we will let programs know. But at this point, it's definitely a hard copy one.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Norman. Let me go back for a second. So a little bit about the career plan. So the career plan, these are some of the things that might be in the career plan. So building relationships with specific trades, gather trade-specific application requirements, match participants with alumni in a particular trade of interest, and identify opportunities for participants to gain experience or additional training or certification. Right. The other part of the orientation is the commitment agreement. So the commitment agreement has to be signed by each of the participants prior to the start of instructions. So there are multiple components to the commitment agreement, but one of the things that's critically important is a waiver regarding the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act. So this particular act gives students autonomy over their educational information. Our commitment agreement is asking them to waive that for your organization and for Illinois Works. If they do not waive that for the Illinois Works program and for your organization, then their information can't be entered into the Illinois Works reporting system. And if the information can't be entered into the system, then they cannot be tracked, monitored. It impacts reporting. And so there really isn't a workaround for that. So any participant that refuses to sign the agreement, then that refusal disqualifies them from being a participant in the program. If you would like to see a copy of a agreement, we do have one available for you. It's in the appendix, exhibit number 6 in your 2022 Grantee Manual. There are some opportunities in here for you to tailor this to your organization. However, there are certain components of this that's required just to make sure that we have the waivers that we need in order to manage the information in the system. I'm going to pause for a second. Any questions about the career assessment, career plan, or the this commitment agreement?
I'm not seeing any in the chat, no.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so we just talked about the information that was required. So NAPTU, NCCER, OSHA, CPR, first aid. That's the general information that's required for all programs. However, each of you have identified a very specific target population or populations. In order to best meet their needs, your curriculum might need to be augmented or tailored in order to respond to each of those specific target populations so that they can be best prepared to be successful in their construction career. So if you could, using Mentimeter, answer this question: how might you be augmenting your curriculum so that you are actually responding to the specific needs of your target population or populations within that 150 to 300 hours? What additional content or support might you be incorporating to respond to the specific needs of your target population or populations? If you are not augmenting your content, please feel free to put none. I'd be curious to know that. Okay, so we have allow for makeup sessions, peer tutoring. Think about your curriculum. Beyond NAPTU, NCCER, OSHA 10, and CPR first aid, what else are you adding to your curriculum in order to meet the specific needs of your target population? Okay, registration for NAPTU, 100%, yes. More instructor training. We're actually going to offer additional instructor training. We'll talk a little bit about that. Lots of hands-on, yes. Thank you. Job readiness training, 100%. The employability skills. So technical training is critical because without the technical skills, individuals can't get into the door. So we have to give people technical skills because that's the entry point. But technical skills are the entry point, not the leverage point for success. employability skills are those things that allow people to have enduring success in any job or within any profession. So, for example, can they manage up? Can they engage in a difficult conversation with their peers? Because they're frustrated, do they know how to manage their emotions, right? So those employability skills might be critical for a lot of our target populations to ensure that they can be successful once they have the skills to get in the door. So when we think about augmenting curriculum, the things that we want to think about is we're giving them the technical skills to get in the door. What else do they need to have enduring success after they get into the door, right? Awesome. Speak with women in trades. Yes. So that's an opportunity to have a conversation around what challenges have they faced, how are they able to overcome those challenges, and what tools and techniques can they share with other women so they can be successful, right? A customized work plan. Yes. Peer tutoring, right? So now, again, those are some of those student support services. NCCR math supplement. Yes, the math supplement is going to be necessary for a lot of students because an apprenticeship program, particularly a DOL apprenticeship program, they actually have a math test requirement to get into the program. So it is our job to make sure they have those minimum math skills in order to pass the test to even get into an apprenticeship program, right? All right, so we talked about job readiness training, communication skills. Listen, communication skills are a linchpin in general for success, but might be particularly important for populations whom we know might have challenges entering into a field that has not previously welcomed them, right? So this is awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, here are some ideas around additional certifications and even some additional content that you might be able to incorporate to augment your curriculum for that 150 to 300 hours. Again, thinking about your target population and what additional support they might need. So you all have already mentioned the additional construction and building math. Another consideration might be test-taking skills. There are a lot of us, I will include myself in the category, who can master a skill, but test-taking, anxiety, right? So what are some test-taking techniques that we can share with them so they can pass that math test or any of the other tests that we know will be required for them to complete even the pre-apprenticeship program. There's the Flaggart certification. I have to put an asterisk by this because this one is a particular sore spot for Dr. Norman Ruano because although the Flaggart certification can add value in a lot of really great ways, one of the things that we notice in the data is that the Flaggart certification is the construction or trade certification that many women are directed towards. And the problem with that is that of all of the construction trades, this is the one that pays the least. And so Flaggarts are overrepresented by women compared to the other construction and building trades. So although it might be important, we want to caution you from pointing women in this direction because one, women are already overrepresented, and two, it is the least compensated. And of course, the goal of Illinois Works is that we're trying to create equity. So we talked about employability skills. You all have already talked about that. And then diversity, inclusion, belonging, and equity. And I think what's important about this is that it may be necessary to have some very specific or targeted education around how to be successful if you belong to a subgroup that would fall into either diversity, inclusion, belonging, and equity. So we can do that kind of skill building. There are a couple questions in the chat, so I'm going to pause for a second. So Katrina says mock interviews And I will open this up for either Norman or Katrina. So mock interviewing would be a critical skill for them to have, not just for moving into the job, but even to get into one of those apprenticeship programs. But it says, right, Katrina is saying that mock interviews, it won't let her submit mock interviews. So that might just be something that needs to be updated in the system, but I'll pause for a second for either Christine or Norman to respond to mock interviews.
Absolutely. Happy to respond on that. So the mock interviews are within the Illinois Works reporting system are set up underneath the transition services module. So I know our SIU partners are still building out that module. They're focusing more on the immediate needs, outreach and recruitment, application, instruction, those items. So that should be up and available very shortly.
Oh my gosh, thank you, Christine. And Katrina further shared that they had a successful mock interview last year with corporate executives to help students prepare for entry while training, which was great because they needed the dry run. I love that idea, and I love that you all were able to create a partnership. So certainly you have individuals on staff that could help, but the opportunity to have created a partnership with executives to help students prepare. And who knows, some of those participants may have, I can imagine that they can meet individuals and create connections and relationships that might have even gone beyond just a conversation. So that is a perfect example of not just responding to the additional needs of our target populations, but leveraging a partnership, right? And so Mike asked that that is the last opportunity to gain new skills. Yes, because if during that mock interview, you all notice that someone is rusty around that question, one of my favorite questions. So tell me, what happened at your last job? Why did you leave your last job? Some of those, it's a skill to answer a lot of those questions successfully, right? And so this gives us a chance to identify those skills and do skill building. Katrina commented that she truly thinks that it's a great tool for all participants. Agreed 100%. Christine has co-signed that, and then Katrina added, it also can be done via Zoom in breakout rooms if COVID is being unruly, which it can do quite unexpectedly. So yes, 100%, this is awesome, thank you. Any other questions, comments related to additional certifications or comment to augment the curriculum? And of course, staying within that 150 to 300 hours. Okay. All right, in your appendix, well, actually not in the appendix, in the body of your document on page 110, there is table 14, the employability skills courses. So if you are trying to consider what additional content might be appropriate, we do have some recommendations here in your Grantee manual. Please note that your curriculum must be approved. So once you have your curriculum completed, it has to be entered into the Illinois Works reporting system, and you will receive either feedback and or approval from an Illinois Works team. If it would be helpful for you, we have also provided in the appendix, template 17, a sample Illinois Works pre-apprenticeship program curriculum. So that is available to assist you and just to give you a sense of curriculum expectations. Let me pause here. Any other questions about, so we talked about orientation and we talked a little bit about curriculum. Any questions about either of those before we move on to training modalities and evaluation, evaluating instruction? Is there anything?
I'm not seeing any on my end, no.
Okay, awesome. All right, so let's talk a little bit about training modalities and evaluating instruction. This content can be extremely robust, and so we've decided that it is worth actually taking a deep dive into these topics in a separate TA session. So please mark your calendars for February 24th. You will have an opportunity to spend some time with our team of trainers and training analysis and instructors. Vera Lee is on the line right now. She is our NAP2 and I was going to say MBOO2. This is not our NAP2, an NCCER on-site expert that is providing support for to make sure that you all are building internal capacity with your certifications for your instructors. So that'll be an opportunity where we will actually take a deep dive to talk about all of those things. So training modalities, instructional planning, training evaluation. I think what is important to know today is that it is a requirement to provide assessments for all of your instruction. Illinois Works utilizes the Kirkpatrick model for training. If you put in the chat, how many of you have already heard of the Kirkpatrick model for training, the 4 levels? You can do yes, you can say no. It'd be just helpful to understand where most of us are. I'd be surprised if most of you are not at least familiar with this model. So level 1 assesses, yeah, this is kind of what I was thinking. Yeah. Okay. So this is, so some have and some haven't. All right, I'll just take 2 seconds here. So the Kirkpatrick model has identified 4 levels of training. The first one is, did they like it? And so there's data to say that if people are having a good experience, then they will be engaged in the process, right? And so in your Grantee manual, we actually take a deep dive around the level 1 evaluation. We recommend questions that you can ask. We talk a little bit about the Likert scale to measure success at this level. So that information is actually inside the manual. We will also take a deep dive on this February 24th during that focus training around instruction. Level 2 is that they learned something. So are they now smarter because of this? Typically, you'll see a pre-test or a pre-assessment and a post-assessment to determine if there's an increase in knowledge. Level 3, which is actually not a requirement, but level 3 is, did they accomplish the task or can they perform the skill? And then level 4 is, and even though this is not required, you all are actually observing and assessing this in real time in the classroom with students. And level 4 is there a long-term impact of the program? So basically, did the state of Illinois see a return on their investment in the pre-apprenticeship program? Okay. On the 24th, we will take a deeper dive and we will talk a little bit more about how to create a level 1 and a level 2 assessment. Most of the tools that you all are leveraging and the instruction that is required already has a level 2. So NAP2, NCCER, OSHA, CPR First Aid already incorporates a level 2 evaluation. Some of them may have a level 1. If they don't, you might want to create that and build that into your process. For any of your homegrown or augmented instruction, it probably won't, and you will actually need to create that level 1, level 2 evaluation. So again, we'll talk about how to do that more later. There's information inside the manual, but just to kind of give you a heads up, the evaluation component is a part of this process. I do also want to mention really briefly that level 4, Illinois Works, there was a longitudinal study that Illinois Works is conducting that will measure level 4. I'm going to talk more about that in the latter section, so I won't go into that one now either. But again, these tools are in your manual, so table 15 is the instructional content assessment. And pausing again, any questions?
I'm not seeing any on my side, Gia.
Okay. So of course we have an evaluation, so we're asking you to please hang out with us to complete the evaluation for this program. But before we do that, I do have one last question. Is anyone opposed to us ending about an hour early? Or do you just have a very strong conviction that we should continue talking about the 2022 manual?
Oh, there we go. There was a little bit of a delay. I thought everyone wanted to hang out for the next hour.
Trust me, I am capable of continuing to talk about this. You'd be surprised how much I am capable of talking about this. Okay, so if no one is truly objecting, I'm going to pull up Mentimeter and share my screen, and we're going to do the final evaluation. And then I just want to, of course, remind everyone that about the schedule that's coming up. You can go online and register for the upcoming programs as soon as it allows me to share here. There we go. All right. So really quickly, I just want you all to see this. This is available. Christine, I know this is available in online. So if you could drop this link into the chat so they can actually have access to the updated TA schedule. You should have received this via email. It would have been from Christine, but you can also access it online. And as you can see from there you can just click on register. And let's take the final evaluation. So please pull out Mentimeter and give us your feedback. Please share your views on this training, and you can rate it 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest. That there are 3 questions. To what extent did this meet your expectations? How likely are you to attend a future session? And how likely are you to recommend this training to others? So please share this information. Okay, please continue to weigh in. Mentimeter will continue to collect this information if you continue to respond. And your feedback is important to us because whatever we can respond to, we try to. An example of that is the breaks that we built in today. And if there are other things that we can do to improve this experience, we want to be able to do that. The second question is, this course was relevant to what I wanted to learn about the subject matter. Please choose 1 through 5, 1 being strongly agree, 5 being strongly disagree, 1 being strongly disagree, 5 being strongly agree. Please continue to respond. Mentimeter will continue to collect this information. So if you're still trying to get in there and fill it out, please do so. I plan to apply what I learned. 1 strongly disagree, 5 strongly agree. Awesome, thank you. We're down to the last of these. What improvements might you recommend? Thank you. Appreciate the feedback. This is helpful. Other thoughts? Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. All right. What did you find effective? Which is basically saying, what is it that we did that you do not want us to change moving forward? Absolutely. Any other thoughts? Okay. 100%. I'm glad about the Mentimeter feedback. Earlier during the NOFO process, we actually were weighing whether or not to keep Mentimeter, so I'm glad that that has remained a part of this process. Happy to respond to the questions. Okay. Thank you. Please continue to respond with feedback. We have one last question. Is there anything else about this course you think we should know that we've not thought to ask about, but it's important to help us as we move forward? Okay. All right, thank you for that. It's not a small item, and we probably could do that. So Christine has access to, she is accountable for all the templates and has access to this feedback. So if it is possible, she will respond to that. Okay, we have some feedback here. Let's see, every session feels like a new requirement. Yeah, I can appreciate that. So every session we are delivering new and unique information. So I can appreciate that it feels like that. Any other thoughts? We'll definitely talk more about data and tracking, and we'll do that on Thursday. All right. Okay, thank you all so much for your feedback. It is always helpful to hear from you. Norman, Christine, anything else before we end? All right. If there is nothing else, thank you all so much, and we look forward to seeing you all on Thursday. Please take 40 minutes back to your morning. Thank you.